Poverty is not the enemy. Indiscipline is. Do not misunderstand. I have known hunger. I have felt the absence of gold in the hand and warmth in the dwelling. I have led men whose sandals were worn thin, whose bowls were empty, whose spirits cracked under the burden of not having enough. But never once did I call poverty the enemy, because poverty does not attack. It does not plot. It does not whisper lies into your ear while you sleep. That voice, the one that says, skip the effort, just wait and hope, that voice is not poverty. That is indiscipline, wearing the face of comfort. Poverty is a condition. Indiscipline is a choice. Poverty can sharpen the mind. Indiscipline dulls it. Poverty can forge clarity, urgency, focus. Indiscipline scatters them into the wind. A soldier can march 1,000 miles with nothing in his pack but resolve. But he cannot march a single step without discipline. Not a commander, not a king, not a beggar, not a god. And so I say again, poverty is not the threat. It is the terrain. Some are born into valleys, others on mountaintops, but the war is the same. What will you do with the landscape you were given? The undisciplined will curse the terrain. The disciplined will learn to move through it faster than those above. There are men born into wealth who lose it all before the sun sets on their youth. And there are men born into dust who rise like storms and sweep across empires. The difference is never in the coin. It is in the conduct. Discipline is the army within. And when that army is disorganized, even palaces feel like prisons. But when it is unified, trained, and loyal, even a hut becomes a fortress. You see someone wealthy, and you envy what they have. I look at their life and ask, what have they sacrificed to build their formation? You see someone poor, and you pity them. I ask, do they command themselves? Or are they still slaves to comfort, delay, and reaction? Because wealth is not the root of strength. Control is, and you cannot control the world until you control the self. That is the first territory, the hardest one, and most abandon it. They build cities out of illusion. They declare war on poverty while sleeping beside indiscipline. They call the storm unfair, but keep walking straight into the wind. If I gave you a map to treasure but you had no discipline to follow the path, would the treasure exist for you? No, because treasure only appears to the one who keeps walking when the road disappears. It is the same with wealth, the same with mastery, the same with freedom. The undisciplined man fights every enemy except the right one. He blames time. He blames society. He blames fate. He attacks the smoke, but never finds the fire. But a strategist kneels before the mirror, not to admire himself, but to interrogate his own formation. Where am I leaking time? What emotion keeps ambushing me? What pattern do I keep calling bad luck when it is actually just undisciplined response? This is how you gain power. Not with noise, not with rage, not with fantasy, but with precision. And the first precision is noticing. Where does my mind retreat when pressure arrives? For the undisciplined mind always escapes to comfort. The disciplined one stays, holds position, observes. Because the one who observes can choose. And the one who can choose commands. You don't need to be rich to become free. You need to become formidable. And you don't need more motivation. You need more orders from within. Discipline is not punishment. It is liberation from chaos. It is saying, this is what I do, regardless of how I feel, how the world shifts, or how loud the noise becomes. It is moving through the storm and not letting the rain decide your direction. Discipline is the quiet general. It does not scream. It does not beg. It does not explain itself to the undisciplined crowd. It just keeps showing up until the war is over, and it's the only one left standing. So I ask you now, not whether you are poor or rich, but whether you are sharp or scattered. Are your mornings precise or improvised? Do you command your time like a formation, or let every distraction break rank? Because in war, it is not the fiercest soldier who wins, but the one who doesn't abandon formation when the fog sets in. Do not fear poverty. Fear losing yourself in the softness that prevents you from outgrowing it. And above all, fear the comfort that rewards you with nothing but delay. I have watched men pray for fortune as if it were a god they had yet to please. They burn their time like incense, hoping wealth will notice the scent. But I tell you this, fortune does not answer prayers. It answers precision, repetition, formation. You build wealth the way you build an army, not with grand speeches, but with consistent drills, not with emotion, but with structure, not with chaos, but with order. And what is indiscipline but chaos wearing your uniform? You set a goal, you take an oath, but at the first sign of fatigue, you abandon position. You let one late morning become a habit. You let one impulse become a purchase. And before you know it, you are outnumbered by your own decisions. That is how indiscipline wins, not in a single strike, but through quiet erosion. One skipped habit, one delayed action, one forgotten purpose, then another, and another. And suddenly your life belongs to a force you never declared war against, because you didn't see it as an enemy. But it was there the whole time, weakening your walls from the inside. The greatest siege begins in your schedule, not at the gates, but in the calendar. One unguarded hour, one weak evening, one broken morning. And by the time you feel poor, you are not poor in coin, you are poor in command. The rich man with no structure is already falling. The poor man with full command of his habits is already rising. Discipline is the strategy of the invisible war. No trumpet announces your victories. No crowd cheers when you choose the right thing quietly. No medals are awarded when you refuse indulgence. But that's what makes it war. A war without witnesses. The enemy hopes you'll get bored. It hopes you'll forget why you started. It hopes you'll want applause more than victory. But the disciplined mind, it doesn't need applause. It needs results. The reward is not just money. It's not even freedom. The reward is becoming someone you trust, becoming someone who holds the line even when no one is watching. Because if you don't trust yourself to follow through, how can any victory last? And this is why discipline is the real wealth. Not what you have, but who you are when everything else is taken. If I strip you of your job, your title, your comfort, your access, will your character remain? If yes, you are rich. If no, you are exposed. You don't rise through the ranks by luck. You rise through consistency, through waking at the same hour, through cutting what weakens you, through saying no even when yes feels better. Every small act of discipline is a vote cast toward the commander you are becoming, and every indulgence is a betrayal, not to anyone else, but to your future self. You may not feel it now, but discipline is time travel. Every sacrifice you make today buys power for the man you will be a year from now. And when that day comes, you won't remember what you gave up. You'll only see what you've built. Because you are building, not for today's comfort, but for tomorrow's strength. That is what soldiers understand, and that is what warriors of wealth must remember. There are no shortcuts to greatness, but there are precise paths, and they are only visible to the disciplined eye. So look around. Where are the leaks in your formation? Are your mornings unguarded? Are your meals dictated by impulse? Is your spending reactive or strategic? Does your phone command you, or do you command it? This is not about perfection. It is about loyalty to your own orders. Because if you can't follow yourself, you will follow anyone. And the undisciplined man always follows trends, temptation, talk, fear. But the disciplined man leads, quietly, daily, ruthlessly. He leads himself, and eventually, he leads everything else. So I say again, poverty is not the enemy. Indiscipline is. Poverty is the ground. Indiscipline is the ambush. You cannot choose where you start, but you can choose whether your steps are scattered or strategic. You can choose whether you are waiting for change or becoming it. Because no matter where you are, discipline moves you forward. And without it, you are marching in circles. Do not be fooled by appearances. The man with expensive clothing and no control is still a prisoner. The man with worn shoes but sharp routines is already free. Wealth is not a number. It is a pattern. And those patterns are laid down in silence, far from the noise of crowds and approval. A general does not win the war on the battlefield. He wins it before it begins, in the hours no one sees, in the questions he asks, in the drills he repeats, in the mistakes he dissects when the world is asleep. And so must you. If your bank account is weak, do not ask, "What do I lack?" Ask, "Where have I surrendered command?" Because the first wealth is not income, it is awareness. Awareness of your tendencies, of your excuses, of the lies you whisper to yourself to justify delay. This is how indiscipline wins, not by overpowering you, but by persuading you that tomorrow is a better time to begin. It convinces you that clarity will come after comfort, that motivation will follow indulgence, that you need to feel ready to act. But in war, readiness is not a feeling. It is a decision. You don't wait for the perfect moment. You create it by moving. And if you wait, you've already lost. The moment you delay action, you allow emotion to vote. And emotion, left unchecked, always votes for comfort. But strategy votes for movement, for routine, for simplicity, for showing up, especially when you don't feel like it. I have known soldiers with average talent but deadly focus, and I have known brilliant minds destroyed by distraction. In every field, warfare, commerce, art, leadership, the pattern is the same. Those who win are not the ones who start strong, but the ones who stay standing. And standing is an act of discipline. So how do you build it? Not by willpower alone. Willpower is a candle. It burns, it dims, it disappears. Discipline is architecture. You build it with systems, not emotions. You remove the decision. You set the cue. You build the path so clearly that even on your worst day, you can walk it blindfolded. Discipline does not mean doing hard things. It means making the right thing automatic. A soldier does not question whether he trains. It is part of his identity. And so must you treat your routines, not as chores, but as declarations. Every act of discipline is a message sent into the future. I will not be ruled by weakness. That message echoes. It shapes how others see you. More importantly, it shapes how you see you. And when you start to believe in the one giving the orders, the war becomes simpler. Not easier, but simpler. Because every enemy is noise, and every discipline is clarity. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop chasing results. You start honoring your own code. The world becomes chaotic, and you become calm. Not because it's easy, but because you have prepared. And preparation is the foundation of discipline. I do not fear the man who practices when he feels like it. I fear the one who practices when he does not, because that man will be ready when chaos comes. That man will be steady when others panic. That man will execute when others hesitate. And wealth flows to those who execute, not those who talk, not those who wish, not those who feel inspired once in a while, but those who move with structure when emotion begs them not to. Because emotion is the weather, but discipline is the march. You do not stop marching because of rain. You adjust your cloak and you keep walking. If the terrain shifts, so be it. If the wind howls, let it. If the sky darkens, let it remind you. You are not here for ease. You are here for endurance. And that endurance is what makes wealth inevitable. Because wealth is the reward for outlasting weakness, not for escaping it. You want control over your finances? Start with control over your mornings. You want control over your income? Start with control over your inputs. You want control over your future? Then control what you do when no one is watching. Because in war and in life, the greatest victories happen in the shadows before the light ever reaches them. There is a myth whispered by the weak-minded that discipline is too rigid, too cold, too boring to lead to greatness. But that is a lie told by the undisciplined to comfort themselves. Discipline is not rigidity, it is reliability. And in a world where everything changes by the hour, the one who is reliable becomes powerful. Do you understand what that means? Power does not come from force. It comes from trust. From being the person others know will not falter when the mood shifts. From being the one who executes, regardless of weather, applause, or doubt. People follow strength. And strength is not loud. It is consistent. Your body follows your habits. Your wealth follows your focus. And your life follows the formations you build in silence. The undisciplined wake up wondering what the day will bring. The disciplined decide what they will bring to the day. And over time, that single shift changes everything. You do not need to be brilliant. You do not need more luck. You do not need permission. You need only to become loyal to your own standards, especially when no one is enforcing them. The enemy wants you to believe that small decisions don't matter. But in war, a single unguarded gate invites the siege. Your life is a fortress. Your habits are the guards. If you leave the gate open for laziness once, the enemy will find it every time. So close the gate, sharpen your hours, defend your mornings, refuse to let pleasure override position. Because pleasure is temporary, but position is everything. You can regain money, you can regain energy, but position, once lost, is hard to reclaim. And every indulgence costs you position. It is not about denying yourself joy. It is about delaying it until it aligns with strategy. The soldier who drinks before the mission blurs his aim. The man who chases every craving becomes a servant to impulse. And no servant ever builds wealth. Only commanders do. So ask yourself today, am I living by strategy or by appetite? When you are tired, what guides your next move? When you are doubting, what holds your formation? You see, everyone has a plan when the sun is shining. Discipline is what you have when the storm comes, and it always comes. Some people fall apart in adversity, but not because they are weak, because they never trained in discomfort. Discipline is discomfort, made sacred. It is repetition without reward. It is movement without motivation. It is choosing the path not because it's easy, but because it's correct. When you live like this, something changes. Your self-respect grows. Your mind quiets. Your vision clears. Because the undisciplined man lives in confusion. He doubts every choice. He breaks every promise. He resents every result. But the disciplined man lives in conviction. He knows who he is, because he has seen who he becomes through consistent command. And once you taste that clarity, no luxury can replace it. No shortcut can match it. No applause can buy it, because it is earned. Step by step, action by action, choice by choice. You don't get discipline, you become it. It fuses into your identity. You stop saying, I'm trying. You start saying, this is who I am. And that shift is final. It is the death of excuses. It is the birth of real power. Not the kind that yells, not the kind that boasts, but the kind that shows up at 5 a.m., that refuses the quick win, that turns the lights off with no one watching because order matters. That's power, and that's what defeats poverty. Not shouting, not longing, not complaining, but quiet, precise, repeated command. So when the world tells you that your struggle is unfair, nod, but do not agree. Because fairness is not your mission. Formation is. Build your habits like an army. Train your hours like soldiers. Cut every weakness as if it were a spy in your ranks, because that's what it is. Every broken promise to yourself is a betrayal. Every impulse obeyed is a traitor in disguise. If you are to lead your life, truly lead it, then you must demand loyalty from every part of yourself. And that loyalty begins with discipline. You want a better life? Don't chase it. Train for it. The undisciplined chase. They run after opportunity, panting, pleading, reacting. But opportunity does not answer to the reactive. It obeys the prepared. A disciplined man does not chase. He prepares. He sharpens his mind like a blade. He clears his environment like a battlefield. And then, when opportunity appears, he strikes once, clean and final. No fumbling, no hesitation, no second guessing, because he trained for this moment long before it arrived. That is what wealth responds to. Not hope, not wishing, not desperation, but readiness. You don't earn wealth by accident. You earn it by becoming a container strong enough to hold it. If you cannot manage 100, you will not manage 1,000. If you cannot control your time, you will never control your money. If you cannot govern your mind, the world will govern it for you. So let me ask you, do you want to look successful or become strategic? Because one is decoration, the other is architecture. And architecture is discipline. It is unseen. It is unglamorous. But it holds up your entire life. Every time you say no to the impulse, yes to the structure, you are adding another stone to the fortress. Others will not see it. They will not understand why you decline the party, the purchase, the distraction. Let them laugh. Let them call you obsessive. Let them say you're too strict. It's what they said about every great general before the victory. Discipline always looks excessive to those still enslaved by impulse. But once the battle arrives, they will come running to the disciplined. They always do. Because in war, when chaos rises, the world does not seek the loudest. It seeks the calmest. The one who did the work when it wasn't urgent. The one who trained when no one else would. The one who built structure inside so the storm could not reach him. That can be you. But only if you stop negotiating with comfort. Comfort is not your ally. Not yet. It must be earned, not granted. And until it's earned, it is a trap. You must make peace with boredom. You must shake hands with repetition. You must become fluent in delayed gratification. Because that's how the undisciplined are defeated. Not with noise, but with consistency. Every single time you choose the disciplined path, you are removing power from the one inside you who wants to stay weak. And over time, that voice gets quieter. That pull gets weaker. That fog begins to lift. You begin to see what few ever will. That freedom isn't found in options. It is found in order. The more you structure your actions, the more you liberate your mind. You no longer ask, should I do this? You just do. Because the decision has already been made by your standard. This is how you multiply power, by removing hesitation. Hesitation is a leak. Doubt is a leak. Convenience is a leak. You cannot command with leaks. You cannot build wealth with hesitation. So become firm. Become unwavering. Not loud, not aggressive, just clear. Let your habits become your sword. Let your structure become your shield. Let your silence become your battle cry. Others will try to outsmart you, out-talk you, out-market you, but none of that matters. Because once you out-discipline them, you have already won. They will burn bright, then burn out. You will burn slow and never go dark. That is the strategy. Not to rush, but to last. And nothing lasts longer than the disciplined. Do not confuse excitement with strategy. Excitement fades. Strategy stays. The undisciplined build on emotion. They start fast, talk loud, dream big. But emotion is a wave. It crashes. It recedes. And when it does, they have nothing left but excuses. But the disciplined man, he builds on stone, not flash, not feelings, but structure. He wakes up before the sun, not because he feels like it, but because the mission doesn't care how he feels. He honors the routine even when no one's watching, because he knows the world rewards reliability, not novelty. And he walks into every day like a battlefield, because that's what it is. Not a playground, a battleground, where time is your terrain, attention is your weapon, and every distraction is a trap waiting to be stepped on. He walks carefully, not slowly, but intentionally, because the disciplined don't just move, they move with purpose. And that makes them unstoppable. Let the world call you boring. Let them mock your systems. Let them laugh when you say no. They won't laugh when your results begin to speak louder than their opinions. They won't laugh when their noise dies down and your structure still stands. Because structure always wins in the long game. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent longer than they are distracted. That's the strategy. Outlast them, outweight them, outform them. And when they fall to their own chaos, you keep moving. Because while they were chasing dopamine, you were building dominance. While they were seeking comfort, you were constructing clarity. While they were drowning in emotion, you were anchored in execution. That's the true victory, when your results make the noise for you. But to get there, you must stop negotiating with mediocrity. Stop debating whether to act. Stop giving impulse a voice. Stop treating your goals like suggestions. They are orders, and orders are not up for discussion. The mind will resist. The body will resist. But if you command long enough, they will obey. Because the body follows the mind, and the mind follows discipline. It doesn't happen overnight. There is no surge, no miracle. But one day, you wake up, and it's different. You don't need to argue with yourself anymore. You don't need to convince yourself to act. You just move, like a soldier who knows his post, like a general who's seen this terrain before, like a king who needs no crown to rule. That's what discipline gives you, peace. Not laziness, but earned peace, the kind that only comes after years of war. The war with yourself, with your weakness, with your comfort. And when you win that war, no enemy outside can ever conquer you again. You become unshakable, because you've already defeated the loudest enemy, the one in your own mind. So don't wait for permission. Don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for the world to notice. Begin now, quietly, strategically, relentlessly, because 1 year of discipline can change your entire bloodline, and 10 minutes of weakness can undo it. Choose. Every moment, you are casting a vote, not just for your wealth, but for the man you are becoming. So, vote wisely, and vote with action, because in the end, the world does not remember your potential. It remembers your pattern. Patterns build empires, not explosions, not lucky breaks. Patterns. Show me a man who repeats the right pattern long enough, I will show you a king. Show me a man who ignores pattern, who wakes up different each day, who lets energy, emotion, and convenience decide his steps. I will show you a man enslaved by his own freedom. Because freedom without direction is just chaos in disguise. That is the mistake most make. They crave freedom, but reject the structure that creates it. They want the outcome, not the order. They want wealth without war, control without conquest, peace without preparation. But there is no peace without preparation. There is no wealth without war. Not war with others, but with the noise, the weakness, the laziness inside. And that war is fought daily, every time you choose stillness over scrolling, planning over procrastinating, precision over pleasure. You are advancing. Every time you delay, avoid, indulge, you are retreating. It is that simple, not easy, but simple. And simplicity is your greatest ally. The undisciplined man makes everything complicated. He waits for perfect conditions. He overthinks, overplans, overtalks. He builds castles in the sky and forgets to lay a single brick on the ground. But the disciplined man builds quietly. He wakes, he works, he repeats. He lets time multiply his silence. He does not rush. He does not chase. He does not explain. He builds and builds and builds until one day, what was invisible becomes undeniable. The world will say, "You're lucky. You changed. You must have had help." Let them say it. You will not need to defend yourself, because your results are your defense. Your habits are your fortress, and no opinion can break a fortress built by repetition. The world honors the consistent, not because they are perfect, but because they are predictable. And in a world drowning in unpredictability, the predictable man becomes rare, and the rare becomes powerful. So ask yourself this: can the world rely on you? Can you rely on you? When you say you'll act, do you? When the schedule says move, do you hesitate? When it's boring, thankless, unseen, do you still execute? Because every time you show up when it's hard, you are writing a different story, not just for yourself, but for every generation after you. Because the disciplined man doesn't just change his life, he changes the pattern of those who come after. You don't break generational chains by talking. You break them by behaving differently. You don't pass on wealth by handing down money. You pass it on by handing down mindset. And the greatest mindset you can give your children, your students, your followers is this: watch me. I don't just preach discipline, I live it. That is legacy. And legacy does not begin with applause. It begins with silence. You, alone, choosing the hard thing over and over and over until it's no longer hard. It's just who you are. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your standards. So raise your standards until they suffocate your excuses. Raise them until the old version of you cannot breathe in the air you now demand. This is how the war is won, not in one bold moment, but in 1,000 quiet ones. When you choose water over wine, books over noise, sleep over screens, work over worry, practice over praise. Each time it feels small. Each time it looks invisible. But together, they build a pattern that cannot be undone. And that pattern becomes your proof. You won't need to scream that you've changed. You'll carry it in your eyes, in your posture, in your schedule, in the way you say no without apology, in the way your presence speaks before your voice does. That's the power of discipline. It makes you unforgettable without ever having to be loud. Because the loudest ones often have the weakest walls. They perform strength to hide the crumbling inside. But a truly disciplined man, he does not perform. He prepares. He does not prove. He produces. His life is evidence. His routine is reason. His results are reputation. He doesn't argue with critics. He doesn't fight with doubters. He doesn't correct those who misunderstand him. He keeps building. And when the tower rises above the noise, everyone sees the truth. But that day only comes if you can withstand the ones where no one sees. When your results are too early to admire. When your progress feels like crawling through fog. When your effort has no echo. That's when most break, but not you, because you know this is part of the test. You know the delay is not denial. You know that true strength is built in silence and revealed through time. You've stopped craving fast results. You've stopped measuring yourself by applause. You've stopped comparing your war to someone else's highlight reel, because you are no longer seeking motivation. You are following orders, your own orders, given in clarity, enforced by choice, reinforced by action. This is the path of the commander. This is the way of the strategist. He does not let the world dictate his pace. He sets the pace. He does not chase abundance. He creates alignment. He does not cry over lost moments. He makes the next one count twice. And if you keep walking this path, if you hold the line when it trembles, if you reinforce the wall when it cracks, if you speak the code even when no one repeats it back, then wealth will come. Not always as gold, sometimes as respect, sometimes as peace, sometimes as total command over a life that once owned you. But it will come, because discipline always delivers, not on your timeline, but on its own, precisely, permanently, and without apology. And when it does, you will realize it was never about the money, never about the success, never about the status. It was about power, not over others, but over yourself. And in the end, that is the only enemy worth defeating, and the only victory worth keeping. You were never meant to be ordinary. You were meant to be obedient, not to others, but to your own highest standard. That version of you exists. The one who commands time, who speaks with clarity, who finishes what he starts, who does not shrink when challenged, nor stall when tired, nor surrender when alone. He is not some myth. He is not some future. He is waiting inside your next disciplined decision. The man you admire, he is just a man who made fewer compromises. So make fewer compromises. Don't let your weakness vote. Don't let your emotions set policy. Don't let your past be the compass. Every day you are at war. And in war, clarity is oxygen. So write the rules, then follow them, then refine them, then enforce them like your life depends on it. Because it does. Because the difference between the man who commands and the man who complains is discipline. The disciplined man does not wake up wondering what to do. He already knows. He wrote it the night before. He planned it the week before. He chose it the year before, when his vision was clear and his commitment unshaken. And when the morning comes, he obeys the man he used to be, because that man had more clarity than the one waking up today. This is the loop of strength. Your past self sets the orders. Your present self executes. Your future self reaps the reward. Break that loop once, and weakness enters. Break it twice, and momentum dies. Break it daily, and you become a stranger to yourself. But hold the loop, and you become dangerous. Not to others, but to every excuse, every impulse, every part of you that wants to stay soft. That softness is not kindness. It is sabotage. It is the quiet whisper that says, "Take it easy. You deserve rest. One day won't matter." One day always matters, because one day becomes two, and two becomes your identity. But the same is true for discipline. One disciplined act becomes a standard. One kept promise becomes a rhythm, and that rhythm becomes your power. You do not need more time. You need more rhythm. You do not need a new life. You need new orders. So write them, follow them, sharpen them, wake up, execute, reflect, repeat. Don't perform, don't announce, don't explain. Just build, quietly, relentlessly, with the calm of a man who knows that every step taken in discipline is a weapon sharpened against defeat. Let them doubt you. Let them out-talk you. Let them laugh, but never let them outlast you. Because in the end, there'll be noise, and you'll be proof. There will be no parade when you choose discipline. No celebration when you say no to the wrong thing. No medal when you go to bed early or wake before the sun or spend 3 hours building instead of scrolling. No one will notice, but you will. And that is enough. Because self-respect is not earned in front of others. It is earned in the quiet. When you keep the promise only you can hear. When you say, I will, and you do. That's when something shifts. Not instantly, but undeniably. The weight you carry begins to feel lighter. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Your eyes sharpen. Your posture straightens. Your words become fewer, but heavier. And your presence changes the temperature of the room. You've seen it. You felt it. Some men enter with no noise, and everyone notices. Not because they're loud, but because they're disciplined. That is earned. That is built. That is not inherited or gifted. It is formed through repetition, battle after battle, where no one claps and no one comes to help, where it's just you and the urge to quit. And you don't quit. You tighten the grip. You narrow the focus. You say, again, and you move. Not for the world, for the standard, for the man you swore to become, for the promise you will not break. That is what destroys poverty, not in the bank, but in the bones. Because real poverty is not lacking money. It is lacking command of your time, your appetite, your energy, your attention, your emotion, your choices. And once you reclaim command, everything else follows. The money, the clarity, the peace, the respect. Not because they were handed to you, but because they respond to order. This is the final truth. The world does not give you what you want. It gives you what you're willing to discipline yourself into handling. And once you prove that, not once, not twice, but endlessly, you will never fear poverty again. Because you'll know that the real enemy was never lack. It was weakness, distraction, delay, softness. And those enemies are now dead. You killed them with silence, with routine, with discipline. And what remains now is the man you were born to be.